Excellent. Good stage entrance. That was great. No
Huzzah.
notes.
Yes. I was slightly disappointed. I thought I was gonna get the and or. I got slashy. I don't know if I'm a slash expert, but I'm an and or author and or advocate and or enthusiast.
That's fair.
Now I will say,
I don't know about expert.
I want to have a mulligan there, Nicole. You could do the intro with the and or, and right as you say his name, our new producer Lily can hit the guest intro theme, and we will get to hear the glory of James's entrance music.
Okay, let's do it.
Entrance music?
Yeah, do it. Remove him. Get him out of here. Kick ass. All right. So let her. You do her thing, and then navigate your way to guest intro. No, it should say guest intro. Click the right arrow. No. Go back. Remember the right side of the screen, there's an arrow? That's left. Go to your right until it says guest intro.
My favorite thing in the world is watching partners explain how to do something to their partners.
And there's the guest intro music. We are killing it again.
All right. Welcome to our guest, James W. Jesso, podcaster and podcaster and psychedelics enthusiast and or advocate and or expert. Come on out, James.
Yeah, bring him up. There you go.
Again, I have no notes. That was seamless.
No notes, but just in case, Nicole, do you want to do like 4 or 5 more cracks at that intro, and we'll just take the best one in post?
Okay, sure thing. However, we do have to wrap this up in 20 minutes, so maybe we should keep rolling.
You're right. You can intro anyone else you want.
And next up is some guy. His name is Josh. Come on out, Josh.
I'm glad that you actually understood the Germanic pronunciation of Josh. It's not many people know that, so I think we're helping our viewers learn a little bit today.
Josh is our resident GM and general smartass. He's also a beer enthusiast and or hentai enthusiast.
Yes, the two things that go together best.
I mean, after a few beers, how can you resist more hentai, right?
The guy gets me.
You guys are gonna gel well together this show, I can tell.
Like a hangout.
So now my co-host is missing. Are we playing the co-host music again? Is that what's happening?
Okay, we're gonna keep doing this live. So why don't you assume that Kelly can hear you right now and hear the mystical voices of your live reading of your 3 paragraphs that you wrote last.
What are you talking about? I wouldn't miss this for the world.
I was gonna say it's pretty disrespectful to not show up for a live reading. There's nothing more embarrassing than going to do a live reading and no one shows up. There's no audience.
Oh my God, that would be like, I don't know. Let me make up a completely fake hypothetical. Not showing up for the show you're producing. Like, that would be so rude. Can you imagine?
I can't even.
I'm sure you'll text me back, Kelly.
Okay. So I kind of flip-flop back and forth about whether or not I was going to do this. But I was finally landed on, I can't keep my art secret forever. It's important to share your work so you can get notes on it. But keep in mind, this is Nicole. I'm not going to speak about myself in the third person. This is my very first live reading, so please be gentle, be kind.
Get off the stage. Sorry.
Actually, could you pan out so that I can see my audience? Thank you. It's helpful for my process.
She made one production decision. It was such a good decision. And I was like, yeah, you're doing it. And immediately Nicole just comes in like, no, smacks the ball out of her hand.
Well, you did say I'm the host and I'm in control. So
this is true.
If you could just shut your mouth and be respectful of my work, that'd be great.
Yeah,
shut your mouth. Shut your goddamn mouth. Great. Okay, so be gentle. Please hold your feedback to the end. Again, my first time. The ogre's breath was hot and damp on the skin of Brea's inner thigh. Her breath caught as he flicked his tongue lightly over the sensitive skin there. His fingers slid easily between her lips, and she moaned in wanton need as he pumped it slowly in and out of her.
David.
He lowered his mouth to her clitoris and went to work, alternately sucking and lapping it with his tongue, sending shocks of pleasure through her. Her fingers found the top of his smooth blue head, and she pressed it down, thrusting her hips up to meet his touch. He finally lifted his head, meeting her eyes with his own, full of mirrored, burning passion. In one motion, he moved up her body, positioning himself between her legs. He braced his right arm beside her head, his left hand steadying his engorged purple cock at the entrance of her cunt. He slid his staff smoothly into her, and she wrapped her legs around his tight blue ass, eagerly pulling him deeper. They moved together, rocking against each other fluidly. Her mind emptied of everything that wasn't him, his breath on her neck, his slow, growling moans, and his pistoning shaft. She commanded him to go faster, and though she cried out in Elfish, he needed no translation. He quickened his thrusts, grinding his pelvis against her as they rode each other faster and faster towards climax. So that's it. Thoughts?
Born with punches, everybody.
Well, I've never had an erection live on a live stream before. Thank you. It's a new experience.
Why do you think I got the book on top of my lap now?
That's fair. Kelly's just happy he has a desk there.
Why do you think I got the desk?
Were you expecting to have an erection every show that we record, or?
Well, I mean, I'm 3 for 3 so far, so.
That's fair. That's a pretty good chance then. So just a reminder, that was Kelly's idea. He signed off on that. He actually read the piece beforehand, and he thought it was great. And he specifically picked these 3 paragraphs to be read. So.
Yeah, I ghost wrote it anyway, so.
So is that actually something that you're writing? Do you write fantasy erotica, or was that it is your sort of endeavors as a novelist? Was that a joke, or do you actually write fantasy erotica?
As at the risk of ruining the bit, that was a bit.
Wow.
I appreciate that you asked, though. I was like, I can tell that you're like holding in your reaction.
On a computer.
Yeah, it's definitely just a bit that I've written an entire novelette of.
Okay, well, I'm like, should I be like really genuinely supportive because it was pretty good, I guess, or should I be teasing? Because if you're serious, I don't really want to tease you. I mean, it's a vulnerable thing to share, But if it's a joke, then
that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. I did anticipate that. I mean, I feel like these 2 guys know me well enough to know that I was doing a bit, but I appreciate your sincerity.
All I can say is no notes.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that David came out to listen to that, by the way. Where do we go from there?
Yeah.
I mean, we could, ask interview questions to our guest, I guess. Is that how these things are done? I guess you're a podcaster, James. Maybe you can give us a little guidance here.
Well, I'm kind of a little bit more curious about this throbbing purple cock.
Good question. Yeah, I thought a lot about that.
If Kelly could describe what he had in his mind in more detail, I think that should be the interview.
What I had in more detail about what?
Purple cocks.
The throbbing purple cock.
It.
Or sorry, the engorged purple cock, I think it was.
Oh, it was engorged, yes.
Yes.
Pardon me.
Oh, are you referring to the fact that I ghost wrote it?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Sometimes I don't get listened to by basically everyone in this room. So just, I like to clearly communicate with everyone. What did I mean? Well, all right. So, Waluigi, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So, kind of the way his hat sits on his head just so. So, imagine that hat, imagine if you stuffed Waluigi into a morph suit that was purple, but it had no arms or legs. It was just a tube with that jaunty hat shape at the end. Now, take that shape in your mind, and that is the purple cock. It's kind of gangly. It goes wah. But that's sort of what I was driving at. And some cocks have hair a decent ways up the base. So Waluigi's has a little pointy mustache amount just under the head of it.
Mm-hmm.
Or sorry, no, this cock I'm talking about, which is like, it evokes Waluigi, but it is not Waluigi. I want to be clear.
That's exactly what I was picturing. You did a good job of describing that.
Well, you did a good job of reading it, Nicole. I'm so glad we're friends and teammates.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we work really well together.
Great, my second on-air erection. This is fantastic.
Perfect.
I'm breaking so many boundaries.
Okay, so now are we going to ask the real questions, or are we going to ask the bit questions first?
I don't have enough time for bits anymore, to be honest. It might have to actually be a little sincere for a second.
Oh my god! All right, we got 15 minutes until we start our game. So let's go with 5 minutes of dumb questions, 5 minutes of the semi-dumb question, and 5 minutes of serious questions. Can we power through this?
Sure. You want to start us up with a...
We could be a bit relaxed too. I can add an extra 10, 15 on the end for me here too. So let's just
figure it out as we go. You know what? Let's just dive right in. No rudder, no captain, no steering wheel. We are just going to dive in. So, James, I recently listened to your episode of the effects of psilocybin on creativity. So I loved it. I want to know more about, like, have you looked into the effects of alcohol on creativity? Because the relevance to us here is that is Nicole's like kind of plan A here in terms of executing this show. So like, yeah, is there a lot of research on that? Is there some peer-reviewed stuff?
I have no idea how sincere that question was. No, I haven't. Although I anticipate that the reduced the reduced inhibitions of what's coming up in your mind and what comes out of your mouth will likely create an increased capacity for some sort of creative expression in some way or another, but there's got to be diminishing returns at some point. So my answer is
about an hour,
yes, no, I don't know.
Fantastic.
I mean, hopefully, because I was told I needed to have some sort of funniness. I'm usually kind of a serious guy, at least publicly. So I've been drinking in the effort to be a little bit more relaxed. So I don't know if that's going to translate as more creative or what, but we'll see.
So anecdotally, do you feel like it's working?
I feel better about myself. So that's the only thing that really matters, isn't it?
I found that it's not so much like, it doesn't so much spur creativity for me as makes me more willing to read ogre erotica on a live stream. It's also being recorded. And I have no intentions to ever run for office in case anyone is like waiting to publish this at the opportune time.
It's also
what I'm curious about is
on a DVD to your parents next week.
Oh, that's
I was
fine.
actually just going to say my dad often ends up watching whatever it is that I do on YouTube and all the rest. So I'm very curious to see what he has to say when he finds this one on his feed, and he's like, "Well, that was an interesting conversation you had there, son."
I'll just send this directly to my parents and get ahead of it. Actually, my mom lives in the same house. I'll just hand her my notebook.
You should just send the story.
That's how you get ahead of the thing. That's getting ahead of the story. You know, classic political movements right there.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't give any context. Just send it.
Yeah, that's the only way I ever send any of my erotica to people.
So I don't know if you've looked into this one, but I'm currently working with studying the effects of sleep dep on creativity. That's kind of my like counterbalance to Nicole's alcohol pursuit. And Josh, I believe you're doing the effects of hentai and creativity, right?
Well, and you add a little bit of alcohol and sleep deprivation on top of that. I try to like round out all my bases here. I figure if one of the thing affects creativity very well, if I just keep stacking them, it's like stacking buffs in a RPG or something like that. You keep getting better and not completely destroying your life and going off the rails.
Yeah, if we're talking experimentally, though, you should really only be changing one like factor in each experiment. But
well, now they tell me.
Okay, Nicole, you want to...
So wait, was that a question about sleep? Was that a question about sleep deprivation?
I truly don't know anymore. That like, if you think you're confined, we're doing a bit, like you should live in our heads. It is a nightmare land. I wrote a whole bunch of questions on here, and I don't remember which ones were sincere, but I'm going to credit that one to the sleep depth. So if it feels creative, then there you go.
I think I heard Matthew Walker on an interview say at one point that sleep deprivation at first gives somebody the perception that they're doing better, but the reality is that they're performing worse in all possible areas of measure. So that's something to hang on as your creativity gets better over time with your sleep depth.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. Like, as long as I have the perception I'm doing better, like, I mean, I'm the only one that really exists, right? So everything else is just like fucking gravy, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Solipsism. Get in it. Get with it.
Ooh, solipsism. Can you give us a definition for that? I mean, obviously, I know what it means, but for our viewers at home.
Shit, I hope I know what it means. I'm going to come off like a bit of an idiot. For using the word without knowing what it means. It's like perceiving all of reality and all of life as being a creation of not just like, oh, I am that I am kind of thing, but as in everything is me. All of this is me and all of reality is me. And it comes from me. I hope that's not wrong. I really hope that's not wrong.
David's usually our fact checker here, but
it checks out. It checks out. It does. Yeah. Pretty much exactly what it is.
Hell yeah. All right, point one for James. I'm writing this down.
I'm already getting points. Are we in the game? This is so existence.
Oh man, are you excited to win this game? Okay, I have. Nicole and I think, are kind of share this sentiment. This is a line of questioning that I think perfectly splits the middle between sincerity and doing a bit. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna compliment your show here. It's very smart, and like I was listening to it today, and like I've been listening to it all week, trying to catch up a bit and be like trying to prep for this because I am a professional, and with each successive episode, and I listened to a whole bunch of different ones, I was really struck by this feeling. I was like, wow, I am so fucking dumb. I don't understand any of this. Like, this dude knows what polyvagal means. This dude knows what receptor site is which.
This might explain my low YouTube count.
I barely know which end to put it in. Like, so what we were kind of hoping was, because like, I'll be honest, I think one of the things that's challenging to me about your podcast, even sharing it with people, is that like you're so knowledgeable that sometimes that in itself is inaccessible, because it's some of the episodes when you walk into them and you're like, I don't understand what brainwave harmonics are, let alone how LSD would affect them. So it's like, all right, this is for the smart kids. I'm gonna go over here and watch, like Come Town or something. So so what we thought we would do is kind of go through a selection of your episodes, like just based on titles. And can you tell us in like simple English, like language a 3-year-old would understand, what they're about?
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Nicole, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I got some here. Got psilocybin and the cultivation of compassion. Can you give us a little bit about what that's about?
So that was a recording of a lecture that I gave that described how utilizing psilocybin can have us be more connected with our feelings, in particular difficult feelings, so that we can feel difficult feelings as they're awakened in us in response to the challenges of others without pulling away from it. And so in doing so, we can stay with a person while they're in their difficult feelings, while being in our own. And there's another layer there, which would make it compassion, which is being able to not lose ourselves in their feelings or dissociate from our own, but stay connected with love and care for that other person's well-being. And that psilocybin can take us through experiences that can increase our capacity to do that by sort of altering the manner in which we feel our own challenging feelings.
Okay.
Was that okay? Was that like... Was that 3-year-old?
So like
what did you say?
that was like 12-year-old,
people.
and I appreciate it. I did have like a 3-year-old suggestion.
Sure.
Is just how mushrooms help you care about shit.
Yeah, how mushrooms.
You
Okay,
saying
how
shit
about
to a
that?
3-year-old, Nicole?
How
gotta,
mushrooms
you
can
gotta
help
learn
you care
sometime.
about other people better.
Yes, that's perfect. I'm gonna scratch out shit and say that. I don't hang out with children, so.
No, I mean at 7 you could probably say shit around them. 7. Yeah.
Okay, I got one loaded up here. Neurofeedback therapy and psychedelics.
Okay, I'm gonna try to get into the sentiment of this. Okay. Yeah. Strapping wires to your brain and then playing video games and having your brain give you signals that makes it happier and healthier.
Hell yeah.
So, like, I look at game shoots duck hunt zapper gun at me, changes brain. I feel good.
Yeah. So, strap wires to your head. Those wires run into a video game. The game is altered by how your brain is working and alters how your brain is working. And where psychedelics come into that is having them in your system while you're doing it, or doing it to make your brain more like you're on psychedelics.
I think
that's up to the 12-year-old level again. But
yeah, I think 12-year-old is genuinely where I'm at. So like outside of any insincerity, I think that helped me understand that a little better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool, actually. If you, I got another one here, actually.
I was going to say, people who are interested in neurofeedback, that episode is with Heather Hargraves, and she's from London, Ontario, and she is another very smart person, but I think that she might be better at the 12-year-old explanations than I am. but she's also very brilliant, as you would see from listening to the episode if anyone checks it out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, absolutely. And for, I guess, for the record, that podcast or that channel on YouTube is Adventures Through the Mind?
Adventures Through the Mind, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I guess, yeah, we can do plugs at the end, but just in case anyone stops watching here because the show gets shitty.
I won't take it personal. It's okay.
It won't be because of you, I promise. I had another one here. A somatic relational approach to psychedelic therapy. What was that about?
I'm so lost during that one. Go on.
Okay. 3-year-old-ish. Somatic means how your body feels. Relational means your connections with others. Psychedelics means you've taken psychedelics. Therapy means you're fixing something that isn't working well. And so it's focusing on how it feels to be in connection with another person as a part of therapy that includes psychedelics.
Okay. Being that other person being like another person that's also, experiencing therapy with you, or that person being like your therapist?
Your therapist.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Something like that. I feel so self-conscious right now. This is very difficult for me to explain it this way. I don't produce content. I produce content explicitly for, generally for a technical audience, right? Although I know I have a lot of general audience listeners as well. So I'm like, it's really waking up some kind of like, maybe some sort of like, inadequacy stuff that I'm like, oh my God, I can't explain it except really complicated. Einstein was right. I don't understand it well enough.
No, that's please don't be self-conscious. You're nailing it. You're doing a fantastic job. Kelly and I are very dumb, and I understood that. So I pretend I'm an intellectual, but I just write ogre porn. So
So if I understand like that one correctly, it's almost like that therapy is the opposite on like every possible level as like taking a giant pile of mushrooms and locking yourself in a float tank. because like you're now with people.
I wouldn't say on every possible level, because there's still psychedelics on board.
Oh, that's true.
So there's something going on there. But yes, it has a number of other elements. For example, structured facilitation, unless you count how psilocybin guides you, how psilocybin expresses its intelligence through the experience it guides you on as being some type of structured facilitation, then that is missing in the float tank for sure. Light and sound that's not coming from inside your brain exclusively, that's also missing in the float tank from a relational somatic therapy session.
Mm-hmm.
And so did you talk to, was that like a therapist that you talked to, that like a therapist that uses those tools?
The relational somatic psychedelic therapy one, I was talking with two people, and one of which focused on the relational somatic sort of understanding of things from an academic perspective, and the other was a practicing therapist.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's really cool. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And both of which were anonymous, although the therapist decided to reveal her identity shortly after that.
Oh, okay.
She's an underground provider.
Oh, okay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's I've seen, I guess, articles about that. Those sorts of things are opening up, like those sorts of treatments, but I don't know how far that goes and how regulated it is and anything like that. But
presently in Canada, there is a very small selection of people who are legally able to receive psilocybin-assisted therapies, and there's even a smaller selection of people who are able to give it, which is TheraPsil, an organization I think based out of BC, and then I think it's called Syntax, that's actually based out of Calgary, and they've both been granted the ability to provide therapy to certain patients under the Section 56 Emergency Access Program through Health Canada, in particular for palliative patients, which is patients who are dying, and their medical treatment now is, how do we make your dying easier? And I do believe that they also got approval for not very many people, a very small amount of people, and they're still trying to get more approvals, but also for one person who was suffering from debilitating trauma who wasn't palliative. And I believe they also got access for their therapists to receive therapy themselves, because in what mind state is it a good idea to have people be therapists providing psychedelics who have never officially received psychedelic therapy or had psychedelic experiences, which is an issue presently facing the psychedelic medicalization I don't know what you call it, pathway movement. That's the word I'm looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something that definitely comes up for me a lot, like in all earnestness, when I particularly listen to episodes about like new innovative therapies. Like I was thinking about this a lot during that the Heather Hargrave one. What's that? Neurofeedback therapy.
Yeah.
And because I was listening to it and I was thinking, just man, I want to try this. This sounds amazing. And yeah, I think what comes up through a lot of those therapy episodes is, especially when you're talking to people that aren't from Ontario, they're in, they're in Australia or in the US or they're wherever. And I feel like it's not addressed, like, but how accessible is this? And like, if it's legal where you are, does it cost a bunch of money because it's not really covered? Are there a lot of barriers where the treatments are legal and they are permitted? Like, I know that's broad, but even for any specific ones.
So I would say right off the bat, good therapy is extremely difficult to access for anyone who is not in a high economic situation. If you're not making quite a bit of money, the chances that you're going to be able to afford therapy is very low. Psychological help is available in Canada that's paid for, but that help isn't necessarily good quality therapy, and you likely have to go through a lot of bureaucratic hoopla to get it For example, I'm waiting to see a dermatologist because I have a scalp thing. And I was informed a couple of days ago, after waiting 3 months, that my appointment will be sometime at the end of 2022. So I assume, I love free healthcare, social healthcare. But so access, the look on your face, access is incredibly prohibitive for good therapy in general. Then when you look at something like neurofeedback, it's highly specialized in its training. It also has extremely expensive technology involved that is so specific that all of that technology generally is very expensive for even the therapist to get access to. So then you're looking at a lot of expensive stuff. It's also not entirely niche. Neurofeedback has a great history of being very effective for mental health issues, including things as intense as dissociative identity disorder, previously known as multiple personalities, and extreme trauma. But because of that, the specialists that exist aren't exactly as easy as finding, say, a basic counselor, right? And then you mix that in with somebody like Heather, who is like on the cutting edge of an entirely new frame of understanding how to work with neurofeedback based in research with psychedelics, which is brain research with psychedelics, which is, since 2012, this has sort of started the renaissance or whatever. It's highly specific, it's expensive, it's hard to access, and psychedelics and psychedelic therapy is still illegal, like basically everywhere. So yes, unfortunately, much of that interview is for people who can afford and access Heather, or are people who are interested in the ideas and can find neurofeedback. Neurofeedback's not hard to find, but it is expensive. It's not easy to find, but it's not as difficult as, say, trying to find a good quality underground psychedelic therapist, which is obviously much more difficult because of the legalities involved in the provider and the risks that they're taking.
Yeah. So are those barriers to access like pretty common across a lot of these innovative therapies, or like really case by case?
I think that it would be, I think it's fair to say that the barriers are pretty widespread. And that, for example, it's probably a lot easier to find a cutting edge neurofeedback therapist or like psychedelic therapist or something in like Los Angeles or New York or Toronto or Vancouver, especially, and even in Calgary, which has quite a scene, which I don't get any credit for, but I think I played a very valuable role in creating back when I was living there.
Yeah, me too.
But, compared to somewhere like Ajax in Ontario, which you may only know because I think that's where Avril Lavigne came from, who you may know. I think that you're of the age to know who Avril Lavigne was, so yeah, it really has a lot to do with geography as well. And neurofeedback, I think Heather was mentioning, and I am excited to try it out, that there are headsets now that are reasonably affordable, like around the $200 range, which is not that expensive, that you can do remote neurofeedback sessions with a therapist who can control that headset from their place where they are. And then you'll eventually get AI and automated programs and stuff like that. But obviously a trained technician, skilled, experienced technician will always be something special.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely would like to be optimistic that some of those things will become more accessible. But as you said, like even kind of basic therapy is often like pretty inaccessible to most people here, right? Like,
well, access is a huge issue in the sort of larger social discourse around the medicalization of psychedelics, because chances are when access rolls out, it's going to be extremely expensive. You have companies, organizations that are literally funneling millions of dollars. They're going to be building these like places like Field Trip in Toronto, which I'm not endorsing, but they exist. It's like super expensive, very swanky looking stuff. Then you've got the cost of training these therapists. You've got the cost of insurance of doing what is still considered a highly risky therapy, and then you've got the cost of the actual substances, which is very expensive to get legal access to these. Yeah, sure, $5 for a gram of mushrooms, but I think it was something like thousands of dollars for one dose through the research or something like that. So you're looking at an unbelievable cost for people to get quality psychedelic therapy with therapists, or you're going to have corners cut. You're almost definitely not going to have insurance companies paying for it because your GP said you should probably have some psilocybin, not for a long time. And I mean, looking at what we get from like what is available with the way our I just stubbed my toe really bad. Sorry. With what we're currently is available to us from a healthcare perspective in socialized medicine, which I'm very grateful for. We're not likely going to be getting high quality psychedelic therapy on reasonable and reasonable access to people who are in lower economic status anytime soon, if ever. So those barriers will exist. So with all this work, it's going to be the upper class, the highest class that are going to be getting access to these therapies through the official channels, probably for quite some time. Yeah.
So for now, the heroic dose in the float tank, or I guess, a reasonable dose in like a stand of trees is our best bet. Sometimes.
I mean, that's therapy. That's not therapy, quote, TM, but I mean, that's a big thing too, which is like medicalization is one way and it's a valuable way. But if medicalization doesn't include decriminalization and the right for a person to take their mushrooms out in the woods, then it's not exactly serving, I think, personally, I don't think, it's the right direction to be going. It's just like prohibition 2.0. It's like prohibition unless you're rich kind of thing, which prohibition already is. It's prohibition unless you're rich. So
yeah, I have actually so many more genuine questions that I wanted to get to, but I think we're kind of getting to a time crunch with wanting to play a game, right? You're probably chomping at the bit over there on the couch.
I've actually been really enjoying this conversation because I'm not too much into the psychedelic scene. I'm more of a drinker myself, the traditionalist, basically. So a lot of this has actually been very interesting to me. So as much as I'd like to get the game going, I'm glad that we took the time to sort of go through this in more of an in-depth way. So thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, well, why don't you guys, if it's okay, why don't you ask another question if you're enjoying it, and then if it feels right, we can get in the game after that.
Well, these ones are the ones, because unfortunately, it seems like every time this happens, I'm not given any real homework to do ahead of time. The last show, I didn't get told what was going on, and unfortunately, I wasn't told about you either. So I'll leave the question to these two right here. They seem to have some good ones up, but please do tell one more, and then maybe we'll get into the game.
Well, Josh, here's something though, Josh. If you don't know much about psychedelics, for example, possibly a lot of other people don't. Why don't you ask the question that feels like the genuine question you're holding?
All right. So I've only done mushrooms a couple times, done acid once in college, all that fun stuff. So my very limited casual experience here, not so much on the spiritual sides of things. And I had a friend of mine actually recently who went out to his cabin after a bad breakup for this sort of thing, this sort of, I'll call it self-therapy for lack of a better term, where he, microdosed on mushrooms and just enjoyed the woods for a little while. And he said he was experiencing sort of like a more spiritual experience. I'm kind of being redundant, but anyways. So I'm just, as someone who's not very spiritual to begin with and one who doesn't do a whole lot of psychedelics, how would you describe the benefits of a sort of spiritual experience in the woods on any kind of psychedelic? But I keep using mushrooms as an example because that's my most frequent used one.
Well, of course, the word spiritual and the concept of spirituality can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty broad experience. I guess I should narrow it down just a little bit by saying...
Well, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Like an individualistic sort of, I guess, awakening would be a good way of saying it. Like just a new openness as a result of the psychedelics in a calming environment like the woods or something like that.
Well, Yeah, there's a lot that could be said about it. But one thing could be something like there is something profoundly refreshing, healing, and positive about having the experience of being connected with something larger than yourself, and that connection being a positive one, like one that feels meaningful. So, for example, if your friend's going through a breakup, if you think about, and I'm just kind of going off the fly, so I don't know what your friend's experience was, but if you think about going through a breakup, my assumption is there's grief, and in that grief, there's sorrow. There's probably a sense of being alone. There's probably a lot of stories there. You know, maybe there's feelings of abandonment. There's maybe concerns about hopelessness or issues of inadequacy or worthlessness. There could be feelings of, there could be guilt, shame. You know, there could be a lot of things going on. And taking something like psilocybin and sort of opening oneself up to feel those things while also opening up to a sense of being connected with the forest that's holding you in those things can kind of create a new way or a different way to move through those feelings and get perspective on those feelings in a way that doesn't make the feelings go away, but contextualizes them in a way that makes them more manageable, or maybe makes them a part of a larger process that enables you to move through them and on to the next stage of your life more coherently, effectively, or positively. Something like that, maybe.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just more curious about it than anything else because in addition, I've just had other people talk about it. So I was always just sort of like morbidly curious more than anything else.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I made a lot of assumptions there. I made the assumption that, you know, the dose was big enough that they felt connected to the forest, that they saw the forest as something that could hold them, that the forest is something that can hold you. I mean, I believe so, but that might not be a thing. But a lot of it, I think, comes down to being able to feel the feelings that are there in a way that that feeling process is held in a different context than it would be otherwise. And by that, I mean psychological context, as in like you're maybe experiencing them less from this like, I just wish it wasn't hurting so much and I don't want to be here, to, this is just what's happening and it's moving through me, for example, is something that tends to come up with psilocybin, or it pushes those emotions through you, whether you want to feel them or not. And then also being in a situation where because you're on mushrooms, you're looking around and you feel the life of the trees. You feel the forest around you. You feel it living and breathing. You maybe hear it communicating to you. You maybe like have the sense that it cares for you, or that life cares for you, or that there is a care and a love that sort of underwrites all experiences, even the experience of the pain, the grief, the sorrow, the sadness, the worthlessness, the guilt. All of that could be underwritten by something greater than how we're reacting to it in the moment, which psilocybin in a forest can really wake up. And then those feelings and the stories we have about them can shift as a consequence of experiences like that. I don't know if that made sense.
You don't give yourself enough credit. You said you very usually speak to a technical audience, but that was very well eloquated towards more of a layman's thing, speaking as a layman and these sorts of things. So thank you for that very good answer, for lack of anything profound to say myself. So
well, thank you, and thank you for your compliment and for your question. I think questions are a beautiful thing. I think a sacred thing to ask a question. And so it felt like you brought an honest question, and I appreciate that you did so.
And sorry, I got a bit distracted by tech stuff, but your question, was it basically like how would you explain to like you as a layman how like mushrooms in a forest can be therapeutic?
Well, yeah, sort of the experience itself, and then sort of like what could be beneficial about that, because like I said, I don't do a lot of that sort of thing at the best of times, so it's more of curiosity because I know friends of mine have done it. So
yeah,
I think that it was very well explained there.
Another thing too, and this is going to seem maybe counterintuitive, is that as we're suffering through those things, for example, like all the feelings that I mentioned, there's no guarantee that in the midst of all of that, we're actually just feeling super fucking sad and just being like, I am so sad, and just crying because I'm so sad. And one of the things that mushrooms do is that they help us feel when we're sad, acknowledge that we're sad, and just cry and just feel those things. A lot of the times we end up stuck in places because we're not actually feeling our way through them. And mushrooms can help in that. And then mushrooms in the context of the forest, like I was just describing more so, it adds a flavor to the meaning of that experience with that, which then can sort of feed into the, the, I don't know if the right word, the rehabilitating after a breakup process, in a way that could be very helpful, right?
Perfect. I think you've explained it very well. I'm going to turn to the other two hosts here because I feel like I've been kind of stealing the show for a little while here. So,
no, man, it's everyone's show. You added to it. If I can add to that, like my experience as like a lay person is that kind of to add to what you said, James, about like just feeling sad or something like that. I had a pretty like one particular experience I had, which was a whole plant medicine retreat. Not just the substance I was engaging with, but also the people around me and the kind of like intentions we put into it and the kind of container they were creating and the way that they were like there to support you and really what they were encouraging. Taught me a lot about that, which was that a lot of what I was doing in my life was like when you have the negative emotion, you suppress it. Like that's how you improve your mood. And that it was like a skill I had to learn, and I've been trying to learn ever since. And I think getting better at it is being able to like stop when you feel that tinge of whatever is frazzling you. Like today for me, it's being stressed because I have to run from one thing to the other, and we're setting up all these things for this. And being able to, instead of just being, I'm mad at this thing because it's happening, looking at what's internal and going, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxiety right now. Why am I feeling anxiety? And kind of, just being better identifying what you're feeling and why you're feeling it and allowing yourself to feel it and think like, okay, it's okay to feel anxious right now. You have some reasons to. Or with the example of the breakup, like it's okay to feel sad. It's healthy to feel sad. So instead of going, well, I have to push that behind me, like taking a minute to drop everything, both physically and emotionally, and going, okay, I'm going to lay on the couch and just let this emotion wash through me. And often what I found is you actually start to feel better faster because you took your 10 minutes to cry about it instead of spending 6 months just or just indefinitely, like just forever not dealing with that emotion. I don't know if I added to that in like a clear way, but
no, that's it's a good little addition in my opinion. I mean, it all sounds like heap shit to me, but no, it's actually very, very educational, I guess, in these sorts of things. So it's exciting to see these other perspectives on not only psychedelics just as a concept, but what it can do to benefit people. Because, like I said, I've only experienced it as a recreational substance. So it's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry, James, if you don't mind. I was just going to add, I think there's a lot of crossover. And I imagine this is like pretty common, but there's a lot of crossover, I think, between things like psychedelics, specifically mushrooms, and things like mindfulness in that same way where it's, it's allowing yourself to feel something, acknowledging that you feel that thing, and then going back to like some sort of like anchor. Like a lot of meditation uses your breath, obviously, but it's I think it's interesting that there's a lot of crossover between. It's interesting to me. There's a lot of crossover between psychedelics and mindfulness, and I think psychedelics are, I think, a good gateway into that sort of mindfulness practice because it gives you a glimpse. I think it's like a kind of a highway to that sort of thing where it's like, okay, I'm on this train now and this is happening to me. Whereas I feel with meditation, you get like little glimpses of that, but it takes a lot of time and effort and work. So I've talked to a few people, and that's been their gateway into, you know, a more mindful practice, more meditation, that sort of thing. Is they've done some sort of psychedelic, they've experienced this feeling, and then they've somehow come across meditation and been like, oh, this makes me feel the same way, and this is something that I can do in the morning before work. Yeah, it's an interesting connection. Sorry, James, you were saying something?
Yeah, no apologies needed. I'll actually, what I was going to say,
no,
compliments.
Is back.
Yeah. Sorry.
So what I was going to say is that the feeling of sadness, right? Okay, sadness. But even if conceptually, like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to let myself feel sad. I don't know if any of you have experienced this where you're like, yeah, I'm going to let myself feel sad. And as soon as you do that, it's like the sadness is gone. I don't know if you've had an experience where you felt tears coming up and you're like, yeah, this is good. I'm going to let myself cry. But you can't. Your body just shuts it down. Your nervous system just shuts it down. Like, whoop, you're like, oh, I want to be able to, but I'm stuck here. That the thing with psilocybin is that part of you that is clamping down, that sort of automatic defensiveness, the automatic self-protection from feelings that are not okay, that you don't like, that we've been taught are bad and wrong, which is anything that, you know, increasingly less, but, you know, sad, you want to get away from sadness as quickly as possible. You want to get through, you want sadness to go away. That's what sadness is for. Sadness is to make it go away, kind of thing. It's hard to get out of that. And psilocybin can break those walls down. So it just comes out of you. You don't have to try. It's just there. You just either let it happen or you don't. And if you don't, it feels horrible, way worse. It's anxiety and it's stress and it's bad trip eventually, you know, if it's too much. But it can just come out of you. And then there's the context of feeling also connected with things beyond yourself, and that your sadness, it coming through you, is also connected. And this is something that's important to speak to, because when you say meditation, I love the metaphor, something like, you know, meditation is like getting your pilot's license, and psychedelics are like flying a plane. You certainly don't need your license to try to fly the plane, but it does help. And it's entirely possible. We've been talking positively about psychedelics. It's entirely possible to hurt yourself. It's entirely possible to take too much, to take it in the wrong context with the wrong people or the wrong lack of people, and end up having an experience that is just too much, too soon, too fast. Because we're talking about sadness and connecting with the force and all the rest, but there's also the possibility of just feeling like trapped in an infinite loop of lost and alone and hell with no escape, and there are demons coming at you and aliens trying to fuck your brain and stuff, and you're just full of anxiety. You know, you can go into that place too, right? And so in the conversations we're having about the positive effects of psychedelics, it's also incredibly important still to keep in mind that, you know, they are they're extremely powerful, you know, and they can be, in the right doses, used as playthings, and they can be fantastic as playthings, as I can attest to, and Josh, you could probably also attest to. And yeah, and you know, they can also cause quite a hard time, and especially when you're using them without the recognition that they can be difficult. That can set up for a hard time, because then when it starts getting a hard time, you're like, oh shit, this isn't supposed to happen. This is supposed to be fun, and there's the anxiety. Or you're like, yeah, mushrooms are good for me. I'm going to use them to heal my depression. I'm just going to go out into the woods and I'm just going to eat like 5 grams, just like Terrence McKenna said. And that's just going to heal my depression, because that's what the science says, right? But then you end up freaking out, and, you know, it doesn't end up being positive. So it's not all good here, but there's a lot of good that can come from it. So I wanted to add that little caveat in too.
I think that's important to sort of add there. I mean, that's like a lot of medications that have to do with mind altering, for, again, lack of a better term coming to my head at the moment. I think it's important to acknowledge that these things are altering states. And so, yeah, basically buyer beware and be aware of what can happen. But yeah, like you said, I think there's lots of good that can come from it, even just looking at an outside observer, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're not, and a lot of the conversations we're talking about is the mostly well-managed experience. But the reality is psychedelics are so much more than what we're talking about, and they will take you to places you cannot even believe or anticipate in advance. Like, it is a strange world. What Eric Davis says, high weirdness. there's some unbelievably fucking strange stuff going on. And you take a little bit too much in the wrong context, and that's the only thing you're going to know. And that's cool and interesting and exciting, but it's also can be terrifying and something to be kept in mind. And a lot of the language around psychedelics right now is to try to compartmentalize them into this like tool for wellness and healing and like spiritual practice, but they don't recognize the sort of like being cracked open to, you know, inconceivable realities that actually just leave you feeling alienated and alone, and you don't understand how to make sense of this, having too much God or whatever it is, you know. So yeah, psychedelics are of the wild. They're of the wild.
Yeah, I mean, like I would say simultaneously that like certain psychedelic experiences have been so transformative for me in a positive way, and like in some cases arguably like just are like completely changed my mental state for the better, and like if I was gonna be really dramatic, maybe I would say save my life. But I would also say that like I've had a few experiences on them that were at least one that was based on my first experience that I would say was traumatic and gave me something akin to like a mental break. And so like, you know, both those things can happen for the same person, I think. So like, I think it's important to understand that that whole spectrum exists.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that mental break is actually part of the process you need to get to healing, not to try to like put it on a pedestal or sort of like cut the edges off the thing or anything. But, you know, sometimes that's a part of it too. And if you don't have the right support around you, or you have people that are, you know, they don't understand, it can make it worse. I did a whole podcast with a set of specialists talking about spiritual crisis and what it is and how to pass through it. And I feel like that's one of my more valuable podcasts because it speaks to the, you know, the unintended, seemingly negative consequences of psychedelic experiences or spiritual experiences that end up dismantling your life in a way that you didn't intend, didn't prepare for, and don't desire, at least not acutely. So
yeah, sorry, I would love to second that is a really good episode, and I, even as a dumb person, I totally got a lot out of it. I feel like we could talk about these conversation threads for like hours and hours, but
let's get into some gaming.
Yeah, I'll just wrap it up with another episode recommendation, because this came up a bit when, Nicole, you were talking about mindfulness, and like there's certain like I think, Nicole, when I brought up James as a guest to you were like, oh, he's a shrooms guy, right? And like I think it's easy to kind of label your show as like it's all about mushrooms, it's all about psychedelics. But one of the episodes that stuck with me the most, and this is like several years ago now, this is like 2018 maybe, was an episode that was about mindfulness. You had a guest, I can't remember what his name was, but I think he just talked about mindfulness, and he had this line that really stuck with me. That was one of the benefits of mindfulness for him was that it helped him stop taking the world so personally. And I still think about that regularly in terms of like just feeling better, feeling more okay with whatever's happening, not getting like so angry with the world and holding grudges with people is, yeah, it comes down to that. And I don't know if you remember who that guest was, but it was just a stellar episode, and I would recommend it to anyone.
I don't remember. I don't remember. Yeah, I'm coming up on 150 now. So there's a lot.
All right. Well, if I find it, I'll put it in like the YouTube description and stuff later. But yeah, Josh, do you want to kind of kick us off here?
Absolutely.